Hello, and thanks for joining us again for the latest edition of the Daily Records in Conversation. Today, I'm delighted to say we're joined by the Lommel coach, assistant head coach, Robbie Neilson, former Hearts star, former Hearts manager, Dundee United manager. Robbie, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Yes, lovely to be on, mate. Yeah, looking all good out here, mate. We're just 3 games away from the playoffs, so season's not going well so far.
No, it's certainly was looking at the league table there. You're sitting in the playoff spots, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, which is a big upturn from the previous couple of seasons. Obviously, it's the Lommel SK are a kind of development team, a so-called development team of the City Group. So predominantly they've been kind of down the bottom of the league, but this season they're looking for promotion. So it's been a good year to be here.
In terms of obviously you're working under a former Hibernian manager in Lee Johnson. How did that come about, Robbie?
Well, I've known Lee for a long time. Obviously, Lee played at Hearts for a short period back in the kind of early 90s. So we've always kept in touch. Obviously coached against him as well, similar kind of age. So we've always had a good relationship. So when I came back from Tampa, I came over to see him for a few days, and then he asked if I wanted to come out and help. So it's been another great experience, especially after being in America for a couple of years and then out in Europe. So it's been really good.
How does it work then with yourself and Lee? Because I think you've got a couple of assistant head coaches, isn't it?
Yeah, we do. So obviously Lee's they call it a T1 here. I'm a T2. So and then they have the T3 and T4. So, Lee obviously does most of the tactical stuff. I just back him up on that and help with certain things. And then most of the kind of workload split between the group.
How do you find that? Obviously different from being your own man.
It's been really interesting, So I did it a number of years ago, like probably 10 or 12, 15 years ago. I was an assistant. I did it firstly at Falkirk as a first team, kind of just helping out coaching wise. And then I went to East Fife to go there, so with Willie Aitchison, and it was great, that experience, but I only did it for a short period, and then I went straight into the head coach and did probably 12 years, 14 years of that. So to go back and almost learn the trade a wee bit again has been great, and obviously doing it within such a big group has been really interesting.
How does it mean? You mentioned before, obviously it's part of the City Group, but it's a decent organisation to get involved in. How does that work then? Can you give us a bit of an insight how that works at Lommel?
It's obviously they've got, I think it's 12 clubs in the group now, because the Mumbai team just left, but they get 12 teams within the group, and obviously they have like the global group, and then you have these kind of satellite clubs everywhere, and we're kind of the emerging talent club, which means that they buy like elite talent at young ages into the group, and they generally bring them to Lommel, and then it's our job to develop them, give them game time, and a lot of that's focused around South American kids coming over, 16, 17, 18, 19, African kids coming, some guys from Europe as well, so we've got players from all over the world, and like really coaching them how to play European football, how to play elite football, and also just getting them, used to the professionalism of the game here.
Obviously with the City Group, I assume you've got some very exciting talent now.
Yeah, we've got some top players, so we've got boys here that, one of the boys we bought for 8.5 million. We've got they've just signed the Argentina under-20 captain for 3-4 million. So they've got some real top players here. And our job is to try and blend them in with the senior players that we've got here, but also develop them, to try and get them to elite level.
I mean, that elite level is probably they'll be hoping sort of Man City first team, won't they?
Yeah, they are. That's the ultimate aim for them, But obviously, there's levels within the group. Probably if they don't make it there, you've got Girona, you've got Palermo, you've got New York City team as well. You get Troyes, got a lot of teams within the level that they kind of move in between. The Argentinian player we brought in did a year at Montevideo, so they've got a team over there in Uruguay. So they brought him into that and then brought him over here to try and get him into Europe. So yeah, it's quite interesting because you're dealing with all these different cultures, all these different styles of play as well, and trying to get them prepared to obviously go to the highest level.
Is there a sort of like blueprint that City have put in place for all the clubs sort of thing?
It's a little bit different from the Red Bull, It's one of the things like when I came in that, the Red Bull is very like, this is the way Red Bull play, they're very pressing, high energy, whereas the City groups, because they're so global, it's more of a bit of a methodology of how they play, but every group's kind of individual in the way they do actually play the game, because the team, they've got a team in China at the moment that won't play the same as the team in New York, because culturally the teams are different, the style of play is different. obviously the quality of player within the group is different as well. So there is a methodology, the kind of training aspects of it, but it's more so, I would say it's more like, crossing knowledge across the group is probably the biggest thing. We get a lot of guys come over and help us and show us the things that maybe they're doing in Manchester or New York or South America, and vice versa.
I mean, have you had visits to a few of the city clubs yet? Or have
I have personally, but a lot of them come to us because we've actually just opened a new training ground. So they just spent, I think it was like €10 million on a new training ground, for developing these players. So a lot of the folk are coming, it's got guys from South America recently, some Italians, a lot of the Manchester folk come over as well, just to see what's happening with the process. And obviously, because we are the emerging talent group, we've got most of the young talent in the group, they're always kind of making sure that things are going well. When
you open a £10 million training ground, it's not bad for a second tier team in Belgium. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Like the actual facilities top level. And I think that the aim is to try and get promoted this year. Because obviously the value of the players as well. When you go from 1B to 1A, which is the leagues here, once you get into that top flight, the value of the players skyrockets as well. Because when you look at some of the younger players within this, even we have 4 young teams are called, or development teams from the top teams in Belgium, and they come down, and these guys, when they go back into their first teams and go and play, they're getting sold for like 30, 40, 50 million. So there's definitely a pathway here for getting value in players.
You've got a few. Who's got the B teams? Anderlecht, Genk, maybe, Bruges,
and Brugge. Yes.
So
So it's quite an interesting concept actually. It has its pros and it has its cons. That the pros are that these younger players can come in and they play, second division football, against good players at a good level, playing in front of big crowds as well at times. So it's a real good development for them. The cons is that sometimes they have big squads, so you never really know who's going to play in these teams because they go between the first team and the young team. So it kind of, for the other teams, it makes it quite difficult.
Obviously that's something that works quite well in Belgium. As you know, it's been discussed quite a bit in Scotland. It's never really taken off in terms of getting teams into the senior leagues, but you've got Hearts and Celtic in the Lowland League. Rangers have been in there previously, sort of thing. What's you're taking it from a Scottish point of view? Would you like to see it? Or?
I think if you're going to develop, if you're going to go down that route, then you have to get them pro in the Championship or at worst League One, because they have to be playing at as high a level as possible. I think the new cooperation agreement that's come in with the players moving back and forward is an interesting one. I think it's a big step forward because you're probably, if you're a team like potentially as I was previously at Hearts, if you're putting them into the Lowland League, the level between the Lowland League and the top end of the Premiership is so vast. But if you've got your elite 2 or 3 and you can move them into a Championship team or a League One, then they're developing a lot quicker. So I think the cooperation agreement's a very interesting one. Here with the young teams in the second division, I think if we could get to it in Scotland, it would be brilliant. But each club here pays €1 million a year to put them in. So that's one of the reasons that the second division clubs take them in, is because that €4 million split between the rest of the league is quite significant for the budget. So they do pay quite heavily to get in the league.
Has your view changed, Robbie, at all on the sort of B teams, the Colt teams, since you've been out and you've seen it in Belgium?
I'll be honest, they have to be at a high level. They have to be. If they did it in Scotland, it need to be probably minimum League One. You'd try and get them in the Championship, because really you're developing these players for the top echelons of the Premiership. So they have to be playing consistently at that level. So probably come down to a financial decision. If the top teams are willing to pay that kind of money to put them in the league, then it obviously boosts the budget. I think here it's a lot easier because when you go from 1A to 1B, below that is amateur. It's national as well, so they've got regional leagues and things like that. So these teams, when they're in that second division, they can't get relegated either. So they stay in it and they're consistently coming in. So it's a different setup here. Culturally as well, it's a wee bit different. So I think that it would be difficult in Scotland, but I think if we can get to it, it would be the best way of doing it.
Right. Okay. Going back to your own promotion hopes, and how does it work there? The top 2 go up automatically, is that right? And then they're expanding the league, the top flight this year, so they're putting a couple extra teams in. So
this year the top two go up. Beveren have already qualified. I think Kortrijk are second. So the top two go up, and then it is 3 to 6 playing playoffs, similar to Scotland. And then the winner of that plays the bottom team from the top flight. So very similar to the Scottish setup. Not the way to do it.
Well, obviously, it's like the Scottish, it's loaded towards the team in the top flight. It's very difficult to achieve, isn't it?
It's similar here, to be honest with you, but the only difference here is that in Scotland you play like usually Saturday, Wednesday. They just go every weekend, so it's like Saturday. So you do get a chance to recover, but it's quite an extended playoff. The season actually finishes middle of April, but it's a league season, but the actual playoff final isn't until the end of May, so it extends the season quite a bit.
Also, there's plenty to look forward to at Lommel.
Yeah, it's been a great season for us so far, so we're still, we're going to be difficult to get near the playoffs now. Sorry, the top two, because Kortrijk promise for the automatic one, but definitely in that playoffs with another win.
Well, in terms of that's, as you touched on before, you were at Tampa before that. I mean, you're getting about now in the travel in the coaching world, getting the air miles in.
It's just trying something different. Obviously, I spent most of my career playing in the UK, well, all of it. I played in Scotland and then down in England, came back up and did the same coaching wise, and then just getting out and trying different things. I think that going to America was a brilliant experience. Obviously in the USL, the MLS, and seeing how the different cultures are and different way of playing. This has been even better, to be honest with you, because I spend most of my time. My wife and kids still stay back in Scotland, so I spend most of my free time going to games either in Germany or Holland, France, or in Belgium. So most weekends, I'll go over to where I'm based at the moment, Hasselt's only about 30 minutes for the Dutch border and about 45 from the German border. So it's great just going to get series and just different styles of play, going to visit clubs, see how they coach, because it's the game is, I just felt a wee bit sometimes for me personally, like having been in the same country for so long, you need to go and try and expand and educate yourself, and then, hopefully one day go back into the head coach role, but far more experienced than I was previously.
Can you, without giving away any trade secrets, what sort of clubs have you gone to visit, Robbie?
Well, I've been to see Anderlecht here. When I've been here, I've been over to see Mönchengladbach. Who else? I go to watch Bochum quite a lot, which is quite close to us. It's Bundesliga 2, which I really like. I've been in at Leuven. Got a number of clubs, just within, very, very open here, which has been great. The sporting director we have has been good at getting me into different clubs, watching different games. But I really like the German style of football, to be honest. Especially the Bundesliga. I like to watch Mönchengladbach quite a bit, and Stuttgart and these teams in there. But Bundesliga 2 is a really interesting league for Scottish clubs because the market there is towards the kind of mid to bottom end of it. There's a lot of good players within that would definitely come within the price range of the clubs in Scotland.
Is that a market that maybe clubs should start looking at? I know Aberdeen have done a bit because they've got the German sporting director.
Yeah, I think they probably are, so Bundesliga 2, Liga 3 as well is a good level. I think when you go up to the top level in Bundesliga, they're very expensive, but just the style of play, it's quite like British football. It's quite aggressive. There's a lot of good play in it, but athletic players.
Tell me, you spoke about obviously when you go back to the head coach role. Is that something you hope to do?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's something I want to get back into. Being here has been great. It's been great to be, an assistant. And you get to, almost like build relationships a wee bit different as well with the players because you're not the head coach. You're the assistant. So building that, and then obviously just working in the background and getting things ready for the next step. So yeah, definitely get back into the head coach at some point. It just depends where that is.
You just say you obviously don't have a crystal ball, but would you be open to anything? Would you get the passport out again?
Yeah, well, I've been over in America. I've now Europe as well. So there's been some offers over the time I've been in as the assistant here, even over in America. But I think like this one, I'd like to see out the playoffs. I think it's important. I came over here, we're 3 games away from the playoffs starting. I think I'll see out the season here and then see what happens in the summer.
What about, obviously you spent majority of your playing career and your coaching career in Scotland. Could you see yourself coming back to Scotland at some point?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think there's I think I obviously still watch a lot of the games in Scotland, and I think the game's massively improving. I think the coaching's becoming really, really good as well. We've got obviously Falkirk doing fantastic with John Motherwell. It's been great with the boy Escalosco. How do you pronounce his name? Escalosco.
Asku.
Askew, yes.
Jens Berthel Askew.
Yes, Berthel Askew, that's it, sorry. He's been outstanding. I watched quite a bit of that as well, and I think it's like, the coaching's really coming on as well. So, and even, watching some of the games that get played here in Europe, you can see that come back to Scotland as well. The way teams are playing, it's less direct with the play, a lot of building through the lines and things like that. So, yeah, I'd love to come back at some point.
Obviously, since you've been out there, you've had a bit of interest from Scottish clubs before, haven't you? But it's just a case of, I suppose, it being right for you to
there's been one or two, but I think I'm at a stage now where with Lommel, let's keep saying, with 3 games away for the playoffs. Once we get into the playoffs, we could have 6 games. So we're only 2 months away for the end of the season. So I'd like to see out here and really help them progress. And then, if we get promoted, then see where things go.
Good. And going back to the home front, you obviously see you watch a lot of the games. Your former club are causing a few waves at the top of the Premiership. That's quite refreshing to see.
It's fantastic. Really good to see. Obviously, Derek's done a brilliant job. I think it's a great decision to put him in place, because they've brought a lot of players in through the Brighton connection from the scouting and the recruitment. But I think having someone at Derek's knowledge within the league is super important to blend these guys in. So I think that's been the first big decision that they made that was good, but they're in a fantastic position at the moment. I think it's going to be a great run. And even here in Belgium, people speak to me about it. They're interested in Scottish football now. For the last 45 years, it's been Rangers or 70. But now the players talk about the coaches, people are bump into. If Scotland, they'll actually say, talk about Hearts and the title. So you can see that it's really building interest in the game.
How do you see it going? Put you on the spot here.
It's difficult. I'd love to see Hearts do it. I do. Will they do it? I don't know. Because I think week by week it's going to keep changing. Because I don't see MD going on a 4, 5, 8 game winning streak. I think it's going to be somebody will win one week, lose the next, and I think it could potentially go to the last couple of games of the season.
Mm-hmm. But the Hearts fans. You've played for them. You've managed them twice. I think they'll be desperate for this moment, won't they?
I think everyone outside the Old Firm's desperate for it, I think it'd be brilliant for them. I think it'd be great for Scottish football. You see, like I was saying there, it's like the interest it's generating within the game in Scotland and out with it in Belgium has been fantastic. So it'd be interesting. I'm going to definitely be watching it as it comes along.
In terms of, a lot of people thought that Hearts might fall away, but in fairness, they're still out there and they're still in front, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I think, obviously losing Cammy Devon and Shankland over the course of the season, Halk out for a wee bit. And I think the recruitment's been very good because they've managed, generally when teams out with the Old Firm start to get 1 or 2 injuries, they start to fade away because the level of the substitute or the guy that's coming in isn't the same. But I think the squad that Hearts have built means that, Shankland comes out, Braga's in there scoring goals. So they've got the second guys coming in and being almost as good as the guy that's fallen out. So yeah, I think they've got the strength to do it. It's just whether they can get over the line.
In terms of, you spoke about Lon Shankland there, as a player very well, and you took him to the club as well, and you had him at Dundee United. But how important is he if he's going to be fit for the running?
Oh, he's massive for him, because Lawrence is the guy that the game can be going against you, and Lawrence can score a goal and change the game in a heartbeat. I think early in the season I remember watching the game, actually, we're playing against Dundee at home. And, the game, I think they were 20, 25 minutes in, and Dundee were probably the better team at Tynecastle. And then out of nowhere, Lawrence scores from 25 yards with his left foot bottom corner, and the game changes. So Lawrence can do that. And I think having guys like that in your team, that especially in the big games as it gets to the end of the season when it's tight, you get one chance, he's probably going to score it. So I think getting him back fit will be huge for the run.
And he's obviously a big player for them as well, with being the captain as well. He's a big influence in the dressing room. He
is a big character. He's obviously top goal scorer, captain, Scottish international, so huge experience now. First he was at Ayr United with Ian McCall doing fantastic and managed to get him up to Dundee United. Did really well. Came over to Belgium actually, was in Beershot, one of our rivals at the moment. Get great experience and then managed to bring him back to Hearts again. And he's really kicked on from there. So yeah, I think if there's a last minute penalty last game of the season to win the league, there's only one guy you'd be wanting taking it, and it'd be Lawrence.
In terms of, as you say, it's likely to go to the wire, and certainly when you get to the split, and if it's still a 3-team fight, it's mouth-watering for the neutral, isn't it?
It is, yes. It's like, this is what we're looking for. You want entertainment in football. You want tension, you want big games. I think there's going to be a lot of big games when the split comes and some big performances. And I think that the top of the table will swing almost week to week and pressure on teams.
In terms of when Hearts have got a good record at home, how important is Tynecastle going to be? Because it really can be something special. You know what I mean? When it's packed every game now, but when the fans are up for it as well, they can be vital in this run, can't they?
It's a phenomenal stadium, a phenomenal atmosphere when the fans get behind you. It really is. And they can, I've played there, coached there, and there's times when you can just feel the crowd starting to put pressure on the opposition, and then they start to go. And then you start to get opportunities, people start to make mistakes, and then you can capitalise on it. So, I think that getting a full house at Tynecastle every week will be vital for the Hearts players, but also the away games as well. Hearts have got the capability to take 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 to away games if they get the allocation. So, I think the fan base will be one of the major driving forces to try and get them over the line.
And you've obviously won trophies at Hearts. Scottish Cup one, you saw how big it was. You won a couple of championships. I mean, they were celebrated, but I think if they were to win the league, that would surpass everything, wouldn't it?
I think if they win the league, that would blow everything into oblivion. I think that would be the big one. It will be a big one, because it's been so long and it's such a huge achievement. And I think, Rangers and Celtic have had such a stranglehold for so long that for any club to be able to do that, and if Hearts can do it, it would be, I think Edinburgh would probably shut down for about a week.
One half
of it,
That's it. Well, Hearts play this weekend. They play Dundee, a team you mentioned. You watched the game last time, but the former captain there is the manager at Dundee, Big Elvis, Stephen Presley.
Yeah, I still speak to him regularly, and he's done fantastically well, as I knew he would. I think he's very, very experienced manager. I've worked with him when he was at Falkirk a number of years ago as a coach with him, and then obviously he's had great experience going down to England, been abroad as well. Obviously at Brentford for a number of years, and then taking the step back into management. I think he's used all that, all the experiences he had, and is able to form a team. And it took a little bit at the start to get things going, but once he's got it going now, you can see that ability that he's got to, one, get a group on side, but also to, tactically get them ready and win games. So, it's no surprise to me that he's done well. I think that the experience he's got, within this game, I think there's a lot of good coaches in the Scottish game, and I think he's definitely one of them.
I mean, Stephen, obviously he was captain for long enough. He put up a lot at Tynecastle, etc. Different things. He's played for Rangers and he's obviously played for Celtic as well. But how's he got through his career without swearing?
Swearing, but he's a different character away from the camera. I'll put it that way. He's a top guy, great sense of humour as well. And I think that he's obviously sometimes across in the media he comes across a little bit dry and stuff. But I know for a fact he'll have the players in the dressing room absolutely love him. Because he's got their back and he can lead them, and he's a leader. He'll get behind them. He'll back them to the hilt. So I can see why doing so well, because I know that all the players in there will love him.
No, that's certainly the feedback from the Dundee players. But there was a couple of weeks ago, he made a bit of headlines. You've probably seen it, but he basically described his team after the Aberdeen game as a jobby team. And right, so that was it. And then one of the players came in, Ethan Hamilton. He said, "Oh, he says that because he doesn't swear." And then we spoke to Stephen about it. So I was like, "All right, okay." So that was him getting upset.
I've heard him swear a few times, I'll tell you that. So he's obviously he's calmed himself down for years.
Is he a changed man, is he?
And yes, he's a changed man, but it sounds of it, yeah.
What was it like in that Hearts dressing room?
It was just a good guy, a leader. He was one of those guys that led for the front. When you were going to any venue, that he'd be right there at the front. He'd be putting his body on the line. He would organise. He would be there to back people as well. And I can see why those attributes have made him a very, very good manager, because that's what you need to be. You need to lead people. You need to be at the front. You need to, at times, take the flak for the players. At times, you need to tell them what you think. At times, you need to lead them. So he's got all those attributes. And I think that there's a bit of a trend to go down the route of kind of younger managers, but I think like the experienced ones like Stephen and Neil and guys like that, and Derek McInnes, experienced guys that have been around the block, they can give so much to teams, and they can get the respect of the players, and they know all the situations that are there. So when the team does go through a difficult patch, like, you know, I think, like, at the start of the season, you know, the fan base weren't on side. I think that a less experienced or a younger coach would potentially have crumbled under that, and, you know, maybe changed what they were doing, try to, you know, do things to try and get the fans on side that aren't him. But I think with Stephen's experience, he knows what he needs to do, and you can see they're now getting the benefits of it.
In terms of, you say, obviously stand up, you had him in the front line. A lot of the time the front line was against Vladimir Romanov there. What's any stories you recall from that time?
There could be, you know, you talk about stories with it, you know. It was a great time footballing wise, to be honest, is, you know, because the team, he brought in such good players, you know, and to be part of that squad was great. I was just kind of hanging in there, trying to stay around about it, which was great. But we had some great players, and, you know, it was just crazy. You know, I think obviously there's been a podcast about it, but I think the podcast probably covered 50% of the actual things that went on while we were there.
Was it that bad? Was it?
It was some good stuff, but some crazy stuff. You know, towards the end, it was very difficult. I left before the administration, you know, but you could see it coming. You know, just the way things were, you know, not getting paid for long periods, difficult with some of the players. The standard of the player was getting signed was coming down. You could see it kind of coming a little bit, and then obviously when I came back as a coach, we were going through the whole process right at the end of it when Vladimir had left and was just starting to come in, and that was a really difficult period because people were losing their jobs. You know, so at the highs of, you know, the probably 2006, 7, 8, 9, whatever it was, and then the lows of around about 12, 13, 14.
Because when obviously he had the cup win, didn't he? He had the cup win, Vladimir, and then went close to that title as well. Had a title push under George Burley, didn't they?
Yeah, it did, yes. You know, we had that period, but, you know, like I was talking about earlier on, probably the starting 11 was very, very, very good, but we didn't have the depth within the squad. You know, we probably only had 14, 15 top players, you know, whereas I look at the Hearts squad at now, they've probably got 18, 19, maybe 20. So when you lose one or two players, you know, and you know, probably at that time we were relying on one or two players to score the goals. You know, we had probably Rudy, Roman, and Paul Hartley to an extent. You know, we had probably only three guys that were really going to score as double figures. Whereas, you know, you look at Hearts now, they've got 3 or 4 boys that can probably do that for them, you know. So I think that the depth of the squad this time has probably allowed them to, or it has allowed them to sustain the challenge.
Going back to that title push though, did you view it as an opportunity lost or missed?
Like, obviously, you don't know, you know what I mean? I think we had probably a group of 14 to 15 that was probably good enough to challenge all the way. You know, I think that the level of the old firm has probably changed. It's probably come down in comparison. You know, at that point, you know, they were signing boys for 10, 12 million, you know, like top players at that point, you know. I think you had Larson there, or these kind of guys, you know, so it was like that level was really, really high. And also at that point they were, you know, Rangers and Celtic could go in the January window and spend 8, 10 million to bring someone in, you know. So I think that, you know, it's difficult to kind of judge the levels on it, but I think that this time I think Hearts will get a real chance now, predominantly because of the strength of the squad.
I mean, you did speak about the strength of the Hearts squad, but you also said that Rangers and Celtic probably aren't as strong. I mean, it is an opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. I see that, and I think that, you know, over the course of the season, you know, every probably month everyone's like, oh, Hearts will fall away. But, you know, Rangers and Celtic haven't been able to go on a sustained winning campaign, you know, picking up, you know, 8, 10, 12 wins on the bounce, you know, and I think that's allowed Hearts to maintain the lead. So, and I think that'll be the same right to the end of the season, because, like, going back to what I touched on earlier, the standard of the coaching and the teams within the top flight now in Scotland is better. So, you know, there's not many games now that you're looking at and going, you know, Rangers, Celtic or Hearts are guaranteed to win that because of the quality of the opposition they're playing against.
No, it's certainly, it makes for a very exciting season. But regardless of what happens at Hearts, I mean, it seems there's an infrastructure in place. Things are building with the foundation of Hearts and Tony Bloom. I mean, this is unlikely to be a one-off for Hearts, even if they don't win it this year, isn't it?
It's not, you know, here in Belgium, the team at the top of the league is Union Saint-Gilloise, which is part of the You know, so he took them from, I think they were like a amateur team in the 3rd or 4th division, built them all the way up. You know, won the league last year, Champions League, top of the league this year. You know, it took them a couple of years to get there, you know, but they're sustaining, they're selling players, you know, they're selling players for 20, 30 million now, you know, so there is a model there, similar size country as Belgium and Scotland. There's a model there to do it, you know, and I think that if Hearts, if they win it this year, great. If they don't, they'll have another go next year. You know, and the question will be, can Rangers and Celtic, you know, can they compete? Will they spend more to try and get above them? But then the way that Hearts have spent the money, it has been fantastic.
In terms of how is it viewed in Belgium, the success that Union have had?
It's a wee bit like, probably similar to the fact that they're a lot smaller club, so they don't have a huge fan base, you know, but they're more like seen as like the outlier that's come in and disrupted everything, you know, because obviously you get your Anderlechts or these kind of teams, your Brugges, your Genks that have predominantly for the last 30, 40, 50 years been the top teams. Now this team's coming out of nowhere and is taking their crown. So I think obviously for those teams it's difficult, but for other teams they see it as an opportunity for them as well, you know, to try and mimic what they're doing, you know, with recruitment, with the way they play. So it's been deemed as a great success here.
And then obviously Tony Bloom seems to have the Midas touch when it comes to football teams, doesn't he?
It does, yeah. Well, obviously the analytic companies, it seems to be the driving force on it, you know, known value, you know, bringing in players from, you know, at low cost but high prospect. So I think it's it's a fantastic model. It's done well, and I think it will continue to do well.
And just finally, I was edged ahead. Obviously, you got your cap for Scotland, Robbie. There's international games coming up the next couple of weeks. How do you see them going?
Yeah, I noticed there's been a few new guys coming into the squad, you know, which is interesting. You know, I think that at this time of year, it's always difficult. You know, Steve will have an idea of what his squad's going to be. You know, there's a few guys out injured, you know, maybe a few guys not playing. So I think he's maybe looking at guys at the moment that could maybe come in and fill these gaps if, you know, your McInnes and guys like that don't get back fully fit in time. You know, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we do. You know, there's no pressure in these games. It's just preparing for the big one. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Just finally though, just on the international front, I mean, obviously, do you expect to see Shanks in that World Cup squad, and also your former teammate and goalkeeper Craig Gordon?
I really hope so. Yeah, I think that, you know, Shanks just needs to get back scoring goals, which I'm pretty sure he will. You know, he'll be in it. And then Craig, obviously, I think he picked up an injury recently. He's come out, so hopefully he gets back fit again. But I think if, you know, it's an area that goalkeeper's an area that we don't really very cover really, our you know, top level, as you would say, you know, that's actually playing. And I think Craig's one that, with his experience, you know, just his persona, what he's done already in the game, I think he's definitely one that, you know, where he would start in the tournament, but you would definitely want him there with you because of what he brings to the group. Can
you believe he's still playing at the top level?
To be honest, I can't, you know what I mean? But it's phenomenal. It is, you know, when you think about it, you know, the longevity of that career. And I know he had a period out with his knee injury, but to continue to play and to be able to manage your body to get at the top level whenever he's on that pitch. And you look back at Dundee away this time, that save he made in the 94th minute, you know, it could be a season-defining save for Hearts. You know, to be able to do that at 43 years old when you've sat in the bench for 90 minutes in the cold up in Dundee, to come on and like make a save like that is just top level.
I mean, it'd be some story for him to get to a World Cup at his age, wouldn't it?
League winner, World Cup winner, double dunner.
Every chance.
Every chance, I know. I'll take a bet, but
certainly we'll both have our fingers crossed, I'm sure.
Exactly, I know.
Robbie, that's great. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate that. All the best for the rest of the season, and fingers crossed you win promotion via the playoffs. Thanks, and I hope all goes well, and hopefully we'll see you soon back in Scotland. Appreciate that.
Top man, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you very much for joining us in Conversation with the Daily Record. You can keep up to date with all the latest news on our website and across all social media platforms. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, all the best. Thank you.